Thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Roger Roberts. I'm the chairman of the board of the San Diego East County Chamber of Commerce. This is an event that we attempt to put on a regular basis when candidates are running for office to give the public an opportunity to hear what they have to say so that you can make an informed decision about how you might vote.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started right away. We have a limited time and we want to make sure that we get as many questions in as possible. The general rules this evening are as follows. Each candidate will each receive 3 minutes in which to introduce themselves. After that point in time, we'll begin with the questions. As you know, the questions are coming from the audience. There is no live microphone this evening. All questions should be written on a 3x5 card and sent to the center aisle where we'll have representatives of the chamber picking those up. Those questions are being brought up here to the front. They're being sorted by topic, and then they're brought to me to ask the questions. When I ask a question, each candidate will have 1 minute in which to answer that question. Following that 1 minute answer, once each candidate has had that chance, then we will give each candidate a chance to respond to those answers. Again, please be respectful to all of those here this evening, the audience as well as the candidate. And we will start with Michael Benoit.
Good evening and thanks for being here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. I've been running for Congress since 2000. The year 2000, this is my 6th run. You might ask why do you keep doing that, especially as a libertarian when there's a very small chance to win. And basically, my whole purpose is about the restoration of our inalienable rights that have been usurped by government over the decades. Little by little, with each piece of legislation, we've lost our right, and that's how it's been infringed on. Now, first off, I want to cover the fact that the election is rigged. And the election is pretty well rigged in all the districts around the country, except for maybe about 50 of them. In about 50 districts, there's competition. And the rest of them, they're gerrymandered, especially in California, for one party or the other. And that's why you find that we're not in a lot larger auditorium than this, packed, because the system is broken in the way that it has stolen the interest in the political process. Whether you be in this district that's heavily laden for Republican voters with 146,000 to 106,000 Democrats with approximately 75,000 registered as other, or in Bob Filner's district where it's slanted the other way. This is really destructive to our process. Not only is we're process rigged, as we enter public school and we go through the public school process, we find that we're told that you got to vote for the Democrat or the Republican because the reality is only 1 or 2 of those can actually win the election. And that's what we're told growing up. Well, that reality, folks, has led to a stagnant pool of water. And you've got left or right, the same paradigm going to Washington, and in the process, you have a system that's totally broken. Last night, Duncan Hunter said that the economy was improving up in Crest. And when I heard that, I went, wow, the economy's improving. The economy is the worst it's been in decades, if not half a century. The national debt exceeds $13.3 trillion. The federal budget deficit is over over $1.5 trillion. We're embroiled in 2 wars in the Middle East. Unemployment is at record highs. Social Security is about to go bust. The Federal Reserve is printing money nonstop. And there's a dam of hyperinflation about to burst. The welfare state is about to collapse. All level governments are on the verge of bankruptcy. Home foreclosures are hitting record highs, and much more. We're in deep trouble, folks.
Thank you. What would you do to help public education?
Well, the better question is, what would you do to help education in general? And by doing that, you would also help public education. First off, you get rid of the Federal Department of Education that does not educate any $50 billion a year at the federal level is being wasted on the bureaucrats alone. Leave that money in the people's pocket that earn that money. Liberty is the answer to every problem that we face in this country, and giving parents or allowing parents to keep more of the fruits of their labor so they can engage in choosing their own schools. And competition does work, and homeschool works, and encouraging homeschoolers is another way to improve the quality of education in this country. And I can tell you story after story of homeschoolers that I know that are excelling and beating public schools at every turn. And they're not spending a lot of money to do it. So there's actually technology available today with the computers that people can learn at a fraction of the cost that we're spending in public schools. Well, Duncan covered a couple of the points properly. You know, it certainly takes personal involvement, personal responsibility, and it takes competition, but it definitely doesn't take a central control scheme from the federal government controlling through the state governments down to the local governments, and you got all this mishmash of control. I know with my kids, when they entered kindergarten, they had a thirst for learning. By the time they were graduating, the thirst had gone way, way down, and had to do a lot of personal teaching to get one of my daughters actually through school. I had to drag her through all the homework and teach her what she was supposed to be learning during the day. And we don't have time to go into the craziness of some of these scenarios that they, but I remember when they were teaching phonics, they were trying to bring phonics back in, and my daughter was coming home thinking her name was Michelle. So, and they were messing that up. But frankly, we've had a lot of decay, and it's because of lack of competition more than anything else, and central control.
Our second question will begin with candidate Lutz. We are the East County out here, and we are concerned about our jobs. The question is, how do you plan to bring more jobs to East County?
Okay, well, the libertarian message goes a lot further than the conservative message there, because the libertarian message actually involves getting government out of the way, not just talking about it. This federal government sucks $3.5 trillion a year out of the economy and dumps hundreds of billions of that overseas in 130 countries. They have over 700 bases. This is money that's not in the economy any longer. And then on the other side of the issue, you have all of these social programs that are sucking money out of the economy, and then we wonder why we don't have any jobs. And we are freezing up, but there's another big factor that everybody in this room, regardless of what political persuasion you are, we should be very concerned about, and that is the Federal Reserve banking system that prints money out of thin air and robs you, robs the value of your money, creates the booms in the bust cycles, created this real estate boom cycle, and now has created the bust cycle. They did the same thing in the roaring 20s, created the Depression, and they're doing it again, and they're ending up with confiscating all the property. And now we've got people, we don't even know who owns these mortgages. The mortgage market is freezing up. People are not, the title companies are not willing to issue title on policies because of all of this nonsense.
Candidate Benoit.
Okay, well, Bush tax cuts are minuscule for me, so I'm sorry about that. We talk about big corporations and how they have all these advantages, and folks, I don't know if you know it or not, but a corporation can deduct everything it needs to exist. It can deduct its rent, its electricity, its paper, your toilet paper, you name it. How come individuals can't do the same thing? We want to talk about creating prosperity. How come you can't keep the fruits of your labor? And the other thing that when I mentioned the Federal Reserve Bank, it seemed like we didn't get a lot of understanding. It's a private bank, folks. It's a private bank. It's owned by stockholders, shareholders. It prints money and buys treasury bills with this money that it prints, okay? And that's debt for your children. That's selling your children into slavery. And we let this go on. Whether Democrat or Republican, you should let this go on. Federal Reserve Bank doesn't pay any taxes and is a privately owned company.
The question is this: what is your stance on illegals and the border?
My stance is it's a problem that our own government created. And it's been creating it and exacerbating it for 40, 45 years. We didn't have a problem in 1960 or 1970. Or if it was a very minor problem. And two factors have caused it to explode. One is that they stopped the migrant worker program. It's very minuscule compared to what it used to be. And so workers started coming here illegally. And then all the ramping up, the little bit of ramping up, didn't really solve any problem. A little bit of increasing border control here and there didn't solve any problem. And you're not going to solve it if you actually put troops on the border. But then when the welfare state started expanding, everybody's up in arms because they're draining all the social services. And the idea that they can get free education coming here, get free health care, and free babies, and all of that is exacerbating the problem, and it's all created by your own federal government. I propose that we take the troops from around the planet, put them on our own border until we solve this issue.
Candidate Benoit, what is your stance on illegals and the border, is the question.
Well, obviously, again, the federal government hasn't done a very good job on that. And I don't think you can police the border unless you got people on it. And I'm not in favor of spending more money to solve any problems. I'm in favor of spending less money to solve the problems, okay? So that would include bringing the troops home from around the planet, start defending our own borders, okay? And that's the only way you're going to stop people from coming across that border. You can build fences. I remember when his dad was proposing building these fences, and I was saying, you know what? When they build them, all you're going to do is push the problem eastward, and then they're going to start coming up in boats along the coast. And guess what? That's what they're doing right now. So you can't stop it until you got people on the ground, and you put Border Patrol there. You got to have a whole new military if you try to get the Border Patrol to do it. And this is for everybody's benefit, including the illegal aliens, because they're losing their lives trying to cross through the desert. We created Arizona's problem.
Candidate Benoit, name the #1 thing you are committed to do to improve alternative sources of energy in the 52nd Congressional District.
Well, as always, get government out of the way and legalize liberty. I'm glad Duncan uses diesel fuel, so he'll probably, and he wants to, you know, allow the private market to work. So I'm sure he's in favor of legalizing hemp once again in America. And if you don't know this, the Constitution was written on hemp paper. So hemp can produce paper, it can produce diesel fuel, produce rope, clothing, it can produce food, lots of things. And it's a renewable resource, it rejuvenates the soil. Even during World War II, the American government encouraged farmers to grow hemp for the war effort. Randolph Hearst and his paper mills were the reason that hemp is illegal today. And that's what Congress needs to do, is start repealing legislation that's infringed on our liberty.
We will not take a drop of oil from Iran, not a drop.
Candidate Hunter, one moment, please. Candidate Benoit.
Okay, Duncan, marijuana is not hemp.
You got me, Mike. You got me. ignorance on that.
In fact, hemp growing next to marijuana will destroy the THC content in marijuana. Okay, the cross-pollination there. And by the way, I am in favor of legalizing marijuana. Vices are not crimes, and people that make crimes, make vices into crimes, are criminals, as far as I'm concerned. So, free up the American people, legalize hemp, and watch some other alternative resources. We didn't take a drop of oil out of Iraq. It wasn't about taking oil. If you restrict the oil supply, the prices go up. It was about supporting the military-industrial complex.
Candidate Benoit, what are the most important issues facing the 52nd District?
Well, there already is a moratorium on foreclosures. It just happened. 50 states' attorneys general have filed legal action over this basis because they don't actually know who owns a lot of these mortgages. Now, folks, this is going to it's going to lock up the real estate industry because they can't tell who owns these mortgages. New sales are not going to occur because title companies are not going to want to issue title policies not knowing who the actual owner of these properties are. That we're close to a meltdown here. We're close to an economic collapse in the whole country, and we need to figure this out. Spending $1.5 trillion more than they're taking in, and they're not abating, they're not stopping. Duncan Hunter just voted $53 billion for NASA. I'm sorry, NASA is not a constitutional agency, and I just took some time to look over the federal budget. They're not decreasing anything. Why can't they just at least freeze it? We're close to meltdown here. When you deplete the private sector by taxation, and if you don't think you're overtaxed now, okay, I don't know what to tell you. But when you deplete the private sector by taxation, and the only way you can keep it moving, see, the cost of endless wars on the back of the taxpayer, when you can't pay that, then they resort to printing money to pay for that. You print money to stimulate the economy. That printed money flowing through the banking system flowed down into the California housing market. It created your boom. Okay, and we had a boom through the entire economy here in California during that period. People were selling these houses, fixing them up. There was a lot of action, a lot of new loans. They were people. My home inspection business was doing good, and it was because this money by the Federal Reserve wasn't real. It was created out of thin air to boom the economy. And now, and it went so far, and then when it broke big time. And how are you going to create jobs from that now? Well, what's happening is the whole private sector is going to collapse into the federal government through bankruptcies. When these mortgages fail, your AIG, your General Motors, you all have jobs. It'll be Soviet-style jobs.
This week, a federal judge here in San Diego ordered that the Pentagon and the military stop enforcing Don't Ask, Don't Tell under the grounds that the policy is unconstitutional. Do you agree or disagree? Do you support or oppose Don't Ask, Don't Tell? Candidate Benoit.
Okay, well, I don't agree with one single judge taking that kind of power. You know, the legislature is supposed to make the law, and one judge like that to step in and eviscerate it is not okay. And if, you know, something like this maybe going to the Supreme Court would be a different thing. But personally, I think those in charge of the military need to make policies that are most conducive for defending this country. And that doesn't include being an offensive force all over the planet. That includes, so let's bring them home first, and then you can go over this issue. I'd rather that the people that are in harm's way over there be made safe, and then we can discuss whether or not this is an okay policy or not. I think we should bring all the troops home and ask them each personally what they think.
Where do you stand on embryonic stem cell research? Do you understand or agree that this research does not cause abortion?
I haven't looked at that in detail. I don't think it's the federal government's decision. I don't see that anywhere in the Constitution. The Constitution was set up so that the federal government was to deal with issues that were foreign to the states. And the states were to deal with all domestic issues, which related to life, liberty, and property. And so that is under the guise of the state jurisdiction and not the federal government. And that formula the founders set up is what helped America become prosperous. That formula is the one we violated, so that would be an issue to be decided in the state legislatures.
How can you make a difference in your constituents' lives if you go to Washington, D.C. and become a part of a broken, deadlocked partisan system?
Well, I think the future of this country is going to be very important. You have more people in Washington that are worried about your liberties and securing your remaining liberties. And I will make a difference there. And any piece of legislation that violates either your life, your liberty, or property, or is outside of the constitutional powers of the federal government, I will not only vote against, but I'll get out on the bully pulpit and explain to you how you can fight the federal government. And the health care tyranny bill comes to my mind. Now, I know a lot of the Democrats are in favor of that, but I'll venture that you haven't read it all and haven't looked in there and how many violations of your liberty are in that health care tyranny bill. It's not just enough to vote no on these things. You got to do more. You got to show people how to stand up and resist them on a civil basis. Civil resistance is vital on some of these things, and just, you know, like the state nullification of this health care tyranny bill. The federal government is a mess, folks. I don't think Hunter's there for those big guys. I think he's there for himself. I'll guarantee one thing, if I'm there, I'm for your liberty. And that's what we're sadly missing these days. We're missing a constitutional government. And there's many, many issues that were talked about tonight. But the bottom line is, both the Democrats and Republicans split up your money. And they got earmarks for your money. They all have earmarks. That's what most of that $3.5 trillion federal budget is, earmarks of your money to their pet projects. And they're not there securing your liberty.
And Candidate Benoit, your closing statements, 2 minutes, please.
Okay, well, as you already know, I'm against these foreign wars, especially these unconstitutional foreign wars. I'm unhappy with the Democrats in power right now, the Democrat leadership. They have the power to end these, and they haven't done it. I'm unhappy with the Republicans who have promised smaller government for all of my adult life. They have promised that they were for the small businessman. Well, look around at the economy right now. The Democrats or the Republicans have promised this smaller government, and from the time Duncan Hunter his father took office, the same year Ronald Reagan did, the federal budget was $900 billion. Today it is $13.3 trillion. The federal, excuse me, I got that number wrong. The debt was $900 billion. Now the debt is $13.3 trillion. The federal budget was $590 billion, and today it is $3.3 trillion. This debt, folks, that they have left us is enslaving our children, okay? There's no other way to call that $13.5 or $13.3 trillion of debt. That's enslavement on your children and your grandchildren. I don't care if you're for all the social programs or you're even for the going to war. You have to pay for it as you go. You don't pass it on to your children and your grandchildren. That is not only theft, it's enslavement to them because they're going to have to pay that bill. And they had no say in creating that bill. We have a federal government that allows a Federal Reserve banking system, and I'm sorry that some people don't understand how that's affecting the economy, but when they print this money, it is destroying the value of your money that you have, your retirement, and everything else. You're going to see inflation in the grocery store and all your other expenses due to the Federal Reserve Bank, and both parties let them get away with it.
At this time, we are going to conclude our debate. I'm sure that you agree it was very educational. Had an opportunity to see our candidates up front. I'm glad we did this. We want to thank the San Diego East County Chamber of Commerce for putting this on, the Cuyamaca College for hosting us. We want to thank you all for being here, and we especially want to thank